comes to the Ninth Doctor, I'm always a bit weirded out. Not even weirded out, honestly. It's sort of all the Doctors, I think, with the exception of the upcoming Jodie Whittaker, I think I have the most complex relationship with. I think before Eccleston, and maybe even afterwards still, I think the person most fans would have a sort of complex relationship with would be, say, the Sixth Doctor or the Eighth Doctor. But for me, it's always been Eccleston, and I like the Ninth Doctor for the most part. To me, his Doctor, especially after the fact, always felt like he was the one that was supposed to have done the thing of the Time War. He even specifies it himself in the episode Dalek. But then it's turned out it isn't, and the primary reason that was true was because Eccleston didn't want to be in the 50th anniversary special, and that comes up with the problem. See, from what I've understood is that at the BBC, most actors have seasonal contracts. In which case, Eccleston, Tennant, Smith, Capaldi, and Jodie, as far as I can tell, all signed 1-year contracts, and they renew them at the end of the season. So that works. Eccleston chose not to, and it's always been a bit vague as to why he left the show. One of the reasons was cited was there were problems with creative differences between Eccleston and all three of the leaderships of the BBC, Russell, the producers, and everyone else, and that led to him leaving. He's gone off to say that I could have stayed, could have made some good money, but it have also cost me like my soul and my ethics, and it's all sort of vague. And whatever reason he had to leave there his own, that's fine, but he's also been very consistent with avoiding just Doctor Who as a whole. I would agree that if he had a falling out with Russell, he probably shouldn't have come back after that until the new showrunner came in, Moffat, so which means he should have been in the 50th anniversary, but he wasn't. He wouldn't even show up for the Doctor Who Revisited, which was going over his Doctor. He didn't have to go into details about, why he left, just has to go into how he felt about the show and his character. And you may find every now and then there's a video coming out of Eccleston talking to like some kid in the hospital or a married couple, as the Ninth Doctor. And that shows, at least to the fans, that, he isn't like the worst human being ever, and I highly doubt he is anywhere near close to the worst human being ever. Then Stephen Moffat spoke nicely about him. Whether he was playing politics or not is to be decided, but it might speak of something more along the lines with the BBC. And I think part of me is very, like, why are you complaining about? Because when I think of people who've been screwed over by the BBC on Doctor Who, I can't help but think of Colin Baker, who, to this day, I don't think we could ever find anyone else who'd been more mistreated in the role of the Doctor than Colin Baker. And he's sunshine and rainbows for the most part. He's on Big Finish. Eccleston, if you go to Big Finish, I'll just totally wipe the slate clean. But we're sort of rambling, but let's get back to the Ninth Doctor. So let's just sort of focus on the premise here, which was Doctor Who had been gone for a good number of years, and it's back. So what happened? Was it Paul McGann? Was Paul McGann going to reprise the role as the Doctor? No, we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to bring, a new actor coming in, the next Doctor after Paul, the Ninth Doctor, and he's going to be a very unique character. I think for the most part, you didn't really see a character like the Ninth Doctor. He's not as energetic and as sort of in your face as his predecessors. He's not as out there with his clothing. He sort of is in a lot of ways a callback to the first Doctor that way. Neil Gaiman once pointed out he's not really known for doing anything. He's just sort of sitting there or just sort of standing there, very casual, very controlled, and just sort of watching things play out. He's the very experienced time traveler. And in terms of the Time War, it's clear that in a lot of ways he's a soldier coming back. And he's not quite back. He's sort of seen a lot. He's living with the fact that he's the last of his kind, but he takes solace in the fact that, hey, I may be the last of my kind, but the Daleks are gone, which will be the sort of worst rationalization of his life ever, because even when the Time Lords are quote-unquote gone, and when we thought they were dead, they were just Daleks everywhere, and it was actually kind of irritating. But when it comes to the Ninth Doctor, again, it's the sort of simplicity and subtlety of his performances. He comes off very much as someone who is a Time Lord in a sort of specific way. In other words, it's not just, I'm a Time Lord. Like, there's certain things that come with it. like in the episode Rose, when he talks to Rose about, hey, this is what it's like. I can feel the turning of the earth. I can feel us falling through space. That's sort of what it means to be a Time Lord. You can feel that. And he makes being a Time Lord feel sort of cool and sort of almost spiritual to an extent. And it was clear that there was also a certain darkness underneath him. This was mentioned by the Slitheen, who, in my opinion, were the worst thing about the Ninth Doctor's one season. They mentioned that, there's a darker aspect to you. You're not really a good man. And we sort of saw that when he met the Dalek in the episode Dalek, as he starts to torture the Dalek. In a lot of ways, it was just sort of a flashback to the Time War for him. You're supposed to be gone. Well, you're the last one. That's great. And we're just going to wipe you out. There's a lot of malice to it. Even the more we see throughout that episode, exactly how much the Time War has affected him. And we still didn't know exactly what he did. We do know that, as he says, I wiped them out. I saw it happen. I made it happen, which, as we find out, is a lie. Or at least his interpretation of the facts. See, my opinion of it was always that because of how diluted the timelines were, as they even mentioned, the War Doctor would not remember any of it. So the War Doctor, probably the last thing he remembers was he had the moment, he went to detonate the moment, he went to use it, and then the next thing he knows is there's no Gallifrey, no Daleks. So he assumes he did it. But I think, to me, the best moment of the Ninth Doctor is just sort of him walking, or just sort of him standing. He's not really a speech person in my mind. He has them, but he's always very simplistic about them, very subtle. And to me, I always associate the Ninth Doctor just as a guy that's walking about, just a bloke walking about, just doing a thing. On the negative side of his character, I always felt that his treatment of Mickey was sort of stupid. It actually was just sort of rude to an extent, but that entire season was also very, very mean to Mickey. Not just Ricky the Idiot, but the fact that, it turns out Mickey's life has been totally turned around by Rose being gone for months at a time, and everyone's saying that Mickey murdered her. And, all they could do is laugh about it. There isn't really a lot to say about the Ninth Doctor without having gone into, a whole tapestry of novels and comics, and I really just don't have the time. Usually for the comic books, I only stick into, the multi-Doctor stories, and the Ninth Doctor doesn't do multi-Doctor stories for some reason. I think it's just his televised appearance, the television series, I think plays a bigger role in Doctor Who than any other medium, which I think makes sense. Because he only had that one story and it's so tight that you can't really add anything more to. You can say, okay, well, Rose did this, but by that logic, we also can't have Rose meeting any of her future selves because they're all going to, or the future incarnation of the Doctor, because they're all going to feel some way. Like the 9th and 10th Doctor can't meet up, especially if Rose is there. All right? The 9th Doctor is going to wonder, where's Rose? The 10th Doctor is going to go like, oh, Rose. And the 11th Doctor is going to relatively do the same thing, but at least the 11th Doctor sort of play that off. And there was an anniversary special there were 2 anniversary specials that I read. One was Doctors 10, 11, and 12 dealing with the effects of the Time War, and they're like, well, why did we go to the 9th Doctor? Because his era was perfect. His run, fantastic, as they called it. And I just sort of rolled my eyes. And then there was Supremacy of the Cybermen, which was actually a really interesting comic. But it's just sort of a small adventure with the Doctor and Rose, while the 12th Doctor has to deal with the Cybermen on Gallifrey, who are affecting the timeline courtesy of Rassilon, and we're seeing Doctors 9, 10, and 11 all having to deal with that. And that was interesting, to be fair. Finally, I think the big elephant in the room in terms of the 9th Doctor would be his relationship with Rose. And honestly, I like his relationship with Rose better than I like hers with the 10th Doctor, because here it always feels like Rose is like a student trying to learn, possibly trying to get her life possibly back on track. She just works in a shop, and that's sort of it. She doesn't really seem to want more, be aware of the bigger world, and that's sort of something she tells her mom, that, the Doctor makes you see things in a bigger way, possibly a better way. And it's, the idea that travel broadens the mind, as Sarah Jane would say. That was something really fun. In a lot of ways, he becomes her surrogate father, the sort of mentor, parental figure. And then it goes down the hill with, the whole romance thing, and then the 10th Doctor and her romance, and it's just sort of, Anyway, so that's sort of it. So let's go with, the best episodes list. So because there's only one season, there's not really a lot to go on. There's only like 12, 13 episodes. So we'll just focus on what I think the best episodes are. Best episode, one of them is Rose. It introduces Rose Tyler. It's a great jumping point for beginners coming into Doctor Who. To this day, it still holds up. I would say if you had to pick another one, possibly the 11th Hour, or possibly even Pilot, because those are pretty independent of themselves, in terms of the greater continuity of Doctor Who. The End of the World, I think, is a great story for time travelers. The idea, like, hey, we're going to go first, Doctor. I'm going to show you your planet blowing up. Yeah, it's the end of your planet. That's it. There we go. Dalek. Dalek is pretty brilliant. It's really fun. The first introduction of the Dalek to the new series, and it's also based off of the audio play Jubilee, which let me tell you right now, Jubilee is totally different from Dalek. It's still good. It has a Dalek in it, but let me tell you right now, Jubilee is more of a social commentary than anything else I could think of. Father's Day. I didn't think I'd like Father's Day because I'm not really a super Rose Tyler fan, but the episode was just so sweet and so well-meaning that sort of explains you the responsibilities of a time traveler and exactly what you can and can't do. Also introduces the Reapers, who are supposed to be doing what the Time Lords normally do, which means that the Reapers take the place of the Celestial Intervention Agency. We tie that in with Big Finish. Look at that. The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances, I would say, would be the final ones on this. So what I like about the Empty Child and the Doctor Dances for this story is that not only is it the first story of the new Who written by Stephen Moffat, but it introduces Jack, it does Captain Jack Harkness. It also has a really great premise. The Doctor in this one is Gaius from Merlin, which is great. And there's an interesting sort of bit with, the Doctor talking to these kids in World War II, the middle of the London Blitz and whatnot. It's really touching. And I think those simple moments where the Doctor is sort of, dealing with a family or just any group of people who are in time, he handles it in a very great way that makes him feel not like an outsider. Like, he's very good at adjusting to the time period when the writing needs it to happen, and that's something that I really enjoyed. But bad episodes from this, well, anything with the Sylvine I personally don't like. But that's just sort of me. The long game I felt was sort of stupid, especially because of, how we got rid of Adam. Why couldn't Adam have stayed? What was the point of bringing Adam if we weren't going to keep Adam? I mean, come on. Rose Tyler nearly doomed all of time and space. All right? And Adam just wants to get a couple of bucks. I don't know. The Bad Wolf storyline overall for this felt a bit wasted. For example, the whole Bad Wolf Corporation, there's no real payoff to it. Rose just picks the name. The Bad Wolf Corporation doesn't play a role. It seemed like that would have been more interesting to see, the entire Dalek Empire or the Emperor of the Daleks, the remainings of that Dalek fleet, trying to reach out to the Doctor, trying to get him to, in a lot of ways, begin finishing the Time War. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But with that in mind, we'll bring this video to a close here. If you're new to the Bucket Think Tank, feel free to like, comment, share, and you're a Ninth Doctor fan, love to hear your favorite stories, book, comic, episode, least favorite, same thing. And I will catch you all later. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing off. May your fandom serve you well.